Have you ever struggled with the idea of coming up with a practice routine that keeps you making progress on the guitar, having fun while doing it, and actually getting the results that you want? This is something that a lot of my students struggle with, and so today I want to share the tips and tricks that I've learned as a professional guitarist to help you get the most out of your practice time, make sure you get into all the different aspects of your playing, and this will work for you whether you have half an hour a day, an hour a day, or 4 hours a day at your disposal to practice. And I'm going to give real practical examples of how you can run some of these ideas. So okay, this is something that a lot of my students struggle with, and something that I've struggled with a lot throughout my over 15 years of playing the instrument, because there's so much out there to do and work on and learn, and it can be really easy to either get totally sucked into one thing that you're trying to do and lose an hour of your practice day and you missed a bunch of other stuff that could have been useful. And then it's also really easy to be super scatterbrained with it and be going over all of these different little things. So the way that I like to break it down is I like to think of three main aspects of playing the guitar. The first aspect is linear. So that means playing melodies, playing scales, and then also just all of that kind of linear arpeggios, anything where kind of one note is happening at a time. So for this, I want to dedicate a third of my practice time. So if you're super busy and only have half an hour, I want to work on something for 10 minutes. And if you're doing that where you only have kind of 10 minutes to work on this, I would make sure that you work on one thing a day, only one thing, because if you do a bunch of other stuff, you won't get anything out of it. If you have longer, like say you have, 2 hours in a day, you can of course stretch this to being like maybe half an hour on linear, whatever works for you. But if you have a short amount of time, only do one thing in that 1/3 of your practice time. And so if we were doing that, for example, I would maybe bust out a metronome and practice a scale, whether it's the major scale, the Dorian scale, whatever it may be. And I would work on just really getting it, all positions, up and down the neck, nice and in time. So we're working out our linear playing chops. You can also do this with, like, maybe you do the major scale one day, then the next day you do a major arpeggio. That's an awesome. You can also put the two of them together. I have a video on that called the Russian nesting doll method, where you practice these related scales and arpeggios. But that's the kind of idea. You focus on a scale, an arpeggio, a set of spread triads, whatever it may be. That takes up a third of your practice. And if you have more time in the day, you can obviously do more than one. I tend to focus on this stuff for maybe an hour, but again, I'm a professional guitarist. My job is to play and teach the guitar, so I have a lot more guitar playing time at my disposal than most. So that's the first third. The next third of our practice routine is doing things with harmony, so playing chords. Find a lot of us guitar players, even ones that are intermediate and advanced, get into playing, like, if they see a C chord, they'll play this 9 times out of 10. Maybe they play this one, but you know what I mean. They'll play these chords, but there's so much beautiful harmony that can be had on the guitar. Like playing C chords, I could play this one, those three, and that's just on that set of strings. There's also a bunch of other ones that are beautiful, right? So I like to always have my students be working on some kind of harmony. A great way to do this is to either do harmonized major scales. So for example, if I was doing the key of G, and say I'm focusing on triads on the D, G, and B strings, I could go G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, G. And I can do this in a couple different keys up and down the neck with maybe a couple different kinds of triads, but really working on those actual chords and making sure that you know them. If you're maybe more into jazz or something, you could spend some time getting some of the harder, 7th chords under your fingers. Beautiful sounds. And again, stuff with harmony tends to take a lot of time, because with scales we only need one finger at a time to behave. Playing all these chords, we need 4 fingers to behave, which is a little bit more work. So I always like to make sure that my students are dealing with the harmonic aspects of the instrument, because as much as we love shredding, Probably a good 60 to 80% depending on the kind of music you play. 60 to 80% of your time will be spent playing chords. So it's important that we check in on chords every day, do a little bit of practice with them. The other really great way to work on chords is to say you have a song that goes, say it's C, F, G. Like I'll just do a simple, say you got this. Really good exercise is finding different ways to play those. So maybe I play this C triad here, this F triad with my third and bass. Maybe I go to this C triad here, then this G. Maybe you try it on a different set of strings, so maybe it's this. And just find some different ways to play it, because having options at your disposal is never a bad thing. Okay, so there's our first 2/3 of our practice time. The second third that I think sometimes can be really easy to be forgotten when we're trying to improve our technique and do all of these wonderful things is that we need to play music, right? We can get so bogged down in technique and with all of this stuff that we forget that the end goal is to actually play music. Like, it doesn't matter if you know all of your scales and do all these things if you can't play them without doing them perfectly in order or whatever it is, or if you're shy or you know all these different chords but you've never actually practiced using them in a song. So I always encourage my students to actually be playing songs that they love and want to play. And when you do this, you can also try, like say you, and no hate if you look up tabs on Ultimate Guitar, say you do that, see if you can connect some of the melodies or riffs to your budding theory knowledge and your knowledge of music on the guitar. Like for example, I was working with one of my students the other week on a Trivium song where they do this something like that. That's not exactly what it is, I forget. But and see if you can connect and go, oh, they're just using the A minor scale in that way. And see if you can connect what you're working on in the actual songs that you're working on. Because again, it's kind of like learning a language in that if we work on all these techniques, that's like learning our vocabulary and learning the words. But for any of you who've either learned a second language or tried to learn bits of a language for traveling, it's a totally different thing being able to read and understand things word by word than it is saying a fluent sentence in that. So by practicing the music that you love, you're actually getting into that idea of speaking the language and actually using these tools. I like to say with my students, a carpenter's got a lot of tools, but it's not, the table saw that makes the cabinet. So the technique is the tools, the music is the result. So it's really important when you're practicing. I know it's super tempting and fun to just really grind technique, but if you aren't also working on music, you don't have an outlet for all of this technique. It's kind of like if you were a carpenter and you bought thousands and thousands of dollars worth of tools, but had still never made anything. So anyways, there's just some thoughts on how to go about structuring a practice routine so that you're actually making meaningful progress when you play the guitar. I know it can be really frustrating when it feels like you've hit a plateau and you can't get any better, so I hope this helps. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It really helps me out more than you could know. If you'd be interested in taking a guitar lesson with me, I have a link to that down in the description below. I'd love to work with you on whatever it is that you're working on the guitar. I teach all levels and all genres. And lastly, if there's anything you'd like to see covered on the channel, please leave it down in the comments, as I'd love to help you out and make videos catered to your interests. I got a new video coming out every Monday and Thursday, so until I see you next time, have a great day, and I hope you get to have some fun playing the guitar.